Quraish in a fix. As the enmity of persecutors increased, so did the number of the Prophet's followers. The Quraysh were baffled about how they were going to stop the people from taking the Prophet and his teaching seriously. Makkah was a commercial center frequented by tribespeople from far and near, and during the Hajj, or when it is about to draw near, a plethora of them were to come again. The people coming to Makkah had somehow to be kept at a distance from the Prophet, lest they should hear his sermons and digest his words, or that they may contemplate or reflect and meditate upon them. They went to Walid ibn al-Mughira, who was old and a man of standing, to seek his advice. He said, "O people of Quraysh, the time of Hajj has come around when delegations of the Arabs will come here. They have all heard about this man, so agree upon a common ground, hence you do not contradict one another and each one of you says the same thing." Different suggestions were put forward, but Walid was not satisfied. At last, he was asked to suggest some way out. Thereupon he said, "The most convincing thing in my opinion would be that all of you present him as a sorcerer. You should say that he has brought a message through which he creates a rift between fathers and sons, or where brothers fall out from brothers, as well as husbands part ways with their wives, and that families break up under his influence." The Quraysh came back to the shenanigans suggested by Walid. They sat when the time of Hajj commenced, warning everyone to keep clear of Muhammad, repeating what they had already agreed upon each other. Cruelty of the Quraysh. The persecutors of the Prophet were consumed by a rancor disregard for every consideration of humanitarianism and kinship. Their torture was embittered by the refinements of cruelty, and their misbehavior and rudeness was helpless and ineffective enough to pollute the sacred asylum held as the holiest sanctum by the Arabs. One day while the Prophet was praying at the Kaaba, a company of the Quraysh occupied their places in the sanctuary. Utbah ibn Abu Mu'ayt brought the fetus of a camel from somewhere, and when the Prophet prostrated in prayer, he laid it on his back and shoulders. The Messenger of God remained in prostration until his daughter Fatima, may Allah be pleased with her, came running and threw it off him. She called down evil upon the one who had done it, and the Prophet also joined her in the condemnation. Hamza accepts Islam. Once, Abu Jahl happened to pass by the Prophet, near the Mount of Safa. He insulted the Prophet, and heaped all manners of indignities upon him, but the Prophet of God did not mind at all. After a little while, Hamza returned from a hunting spree with his bow hanging by his shoulder. Hamza was essentially a warrior, the bravest and the most courageous amongst the Quraysh. A slave woman belonging to Abdullah ibn Jaddan told him what had happened to his nephew. Hamza angrily turned back to the holy mosque where Abu Jahl was sitting with his friends. Going straight to Abu Jahl, Hamza proceeded to strike his bow upon his head, saying, "Would you dare to insult and abuse him when I follow his religion and say what he says?" Abu Jahl kept quiet while Hamza, returning to his nephew, declared himself a convert to Islam. The Quraysh were put to a great loss by the conversion of a man of unquestionable character and legendary courage. Proposal of Utbah to the Prophet. The number of the Prophet's followers increased daily, threatening to turn the tide against Quraysh, who as a tribe chose to stay at the other end of the spiritual spectrum and therefore took the situation as highly embarrassing. But they were unable to do anything to alter the course of Islam. Utbah ibn Rabi'a, the old and wise aristocrat of the Quraysh, realized that he must find a way to patch up the differences with the Prophet. He consulted the Quraysh for some concessions with him so that he might give up his mission. The Quraysh felt that it was a workable proposition and allowed Utbah to negotiate with the Prophet on their behalf. Utbah went to the Prophet and sat by his side. Then he said, "O my nephew, you know the worthy position you enjoy among us. But you have created a rift in your people by ridiculing them, insulting their gods as well as their religion, declaring their forefathers as heathens and denying their customs. Now, listen to me, I will offer you some proposals that will hopefully include one which will merit your acceptability." "O Abu Walid," replied the Prophet, "go on, I am listening." Utbah continued, "My nephew, if you want to have wealth by what you preach, we will collect enough of it that you will be the richest of us. If you desire honor, we will make you our chief and leave every decision to your choice. If you aspire for kingship, we will recognize you as our monarch. And if you are possessed of a ghost or a jinn for which you have no remedy, we will find a competent physician for you and spend our wealth lavishly until your health is completely restored." The Prophet listened patiently. When Utbah had finished talking, he asked him, "Is it all that you have to say? To which Utbah replied, "Yes." "Now listen to me," said the prophet. "In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful," and he continued to recite Surah Fussilat, Surah 41, they are expounded, ending the recitation at prostration, verse 37, putting his hands behind him and leaning on them. The recitation ended, the prophet prostrated and then said to Utbah, Abul Walid, "You have heard everything, now it is for you to decide." As the Quraysh saw Utbah returning, they commented, "Honestly, he comes with an altered expression of his face." And, when he finally came, they asked him what had happened. "I have heard a discourse the like of which I had never heard before. I'll swear to God, O Quraysh, that it is neither poetry, nor spell, nor witchcraft. Take my advice and leave this man alone." The Quraysh berated Utbah. He said, "Now you may do whatever you think fit.